1. Busy night, trivia. A lady moves to the bar. I never saw her originally, but I know she's been here because she has the one apparel spritz I made. Fine. Talk to the server. He offers to transfer. I say, nah, just wait and see if she gets another, then you can get the tip if she doesn't get anything else. Which I really thought she wouldn't because she's polite, quiet, and in her mid-40s. Night goes on, she gets 2 vodka sodas after. At last call, she orders a third. Even though her last is basically full, she had become more talkative to the people around and more spacey? I don't know, it was in her voice that she seemed a little out of there in the beginning, and it came out more after the drinks. I second-guess giving her a third, and I decide, she's been nice, she's not a problem. What could go wrong? Big mistake. She's one of the last ones in the bar and starts laying her head on the bar. I tell her she can't do that. She's apologetic. She gets up to leave, fumbles to put her phone in her pocket, and leaves straight out the door. That was right next to her, leaving her phone charger that I plugged in and gave back to her, and her card. I grab him and rush out. She's kind of stumbling, and I stop to give them back and ask how she's getting home. No response, just staring at me with drunk face. I tell her I can't let her leave unless I know she has a ride home. She tells me she has an Uber and then starts to walk away. I stop her and say, okay, can't let you leave until I see you call it. She gets upset, sits in a chair on our front patio. Then becomes 20 minutes of me asking her to call an Uber and let me see. Her digging through her fanny-size pack purse for her phone, me telling her it is in her pocket, her packing it all back up while telling me I don't know her, and then promptly forgetting where she was and doing it all over again. She switched between being apologetic, then cursing me out through all of this. I'm waiting, being patient, trying to convince her I'm just trying to help. At one point, a homeless man walked by and she kept yelling help me to him. Mind you, I'm at least 5 feet away from her. Never got close to her once or tried to touch her to help find the phone because I know that's inappropriate. I finally convince her to call an Uber when I tell her she's keeping the whole staff, just me and the security guard at this point, and then she stands up and tries to walk. Slowly falls, security helped her fall, more like a lowering, and she lets me take her thumb to her old iPhone to unlock it and call her an Uber to her Motel 6 room. Finally, I go get paperwork done. Uber is 3 minutes away. Security is staying with her. Nope, she refuses to get in. I lose my patience. Ask her if she really wants to lay on the sidewalk outside a bar instead of getting home to bed. Explain I've been trying to help. She's not having it. Go in, do my paperwork, watch her fully lay down and sleep on the sidewalk through my cameras. I was 7 seconds away if anyone tried to mess with her. Call non-emergency because I don't even know what to do at this point and I'm not going to leave her out there. Call my owner, who was fully asleep and half bitches at me because this could be a ding on our liquor license. She also tells me good job for doing the right thing. Cops come, she argues with them, I explain it all. She refuses to cooperate with them too and gets a night in the drunk tank. Because even though they wanted to help her Uber at first. When they found out it was a Motel 6, I think we all agreed that it was not safer. Phew, that was a long way to tell y'all don't give them one more if you have that feeling. I've been doing this for 15 years, and I still screw up like this every other year or so. Don't get complacent, don't think about the money. Do your job the right way. I fully deserved every bit of this. Do the right thing. 2. When I was like 23ish, I worked at this upscale bar and grill that was near a very popular park with a lake. You could walk around in about 45 minutes, so it was a very popular walking and bike path. It led to lots of spontaneous walk-ins who were very thirsty after their walk. Great for business. One day, a group of 25 people walked in with no reservation. The kicker was they were all part of a walking group for blind people. They regularly met up to walk around the lake, then have lunch after, and they were all blind. Which is totally fine, and I love that they had a walking group like that. But I had never served a blind person before, and a party of 25 is already difficult to wrangle as the sole server assigned to their section, with no buzzer on the clock. I was really worried I'd do something to offend them. I went around and did my best to explain our rather enormous and eclectic menu to each individual person. After I got their drinks, which was easy because they all order standard sodas and cocktails, I started by offering them categories they could order from. Sandwiches, burgers, entrees like bourbon, mustard, meatloaf, or salmon or a steak. Then I described each of the dishes in a category they picked and helped them decide. It took about 20 minutes to get all the orders. I figured out quickly that when I delivered things to the tables, I needed to describe what I was setting down in front of them, and where things were located on the plate and table, and wait to ensure they found it without making a mess. Easy peasy. They all ended up being super nice. They all had separate checks, which is fine. I'm kind of a wizard with that. And I went around telling each person their individual total, and taking their form of payment from them. About half paid cash, and they just asked me to describe the bills I was giving them back as change, in the order they were stacked, so they could know which bill was which. A lot of them said I had a pretty nice voice and a lovely demeanor, which I figure is a fantastic compliment from a blind person. They tipped me a collective total of around 30%, and when they came back they always specifically requested me as their server. They said it was because I had such a pretty voice, and because I never made anybody feel like I was annoyed with them for not being able to read the menu or find their drinks on the table or something. And I was very efficient. I miss that group, but it also makes me wonder how other servers have treated them in the past, because I felt like I was just giving them basic human dignity. Any tips for serving blind people in the future so they don't feel like they're burdening their server just by having a disability? 3. I am sick and tired of mean people, especially old people, and have been dishing it back lately with great success. First of the week, we have an older woman and her oblivious husband who are kind of unclaimed regulars. They seat themselves every time, even though we have hosts and wait to be seated. He's nice enough, but she's just rude and kept interrupting another server multiple times, once while taking an order at her table, just to tell her she put the wrong creamer in her own coffee and needed a new one urgently. I bring the new one and just say, "Let me know if you guys need anything else, okay?" All sweet and server-like, emphasis on me so they would stop interrupting the other poor server, who was busy herself. Bring their food out and ask, "Can I get you guys anything else?" And she says, "Gimme butter." And she's a 60-year-old woman who hasn't said please or thank you once in this whole interaction. So I say, "Please?" And that made her angry. She called me and the other server the two bitchiest servers she's ever had, and said she knows the owner as he's standing right behind her. And he's kinda cool and knows some people are just dicks. Heard half of it, didn't really care nor turn around to see what was happening. Husband is embarrassed and said, "Babe, I told you not to say that." After her rambling, I ask, "Can I get you anything else?" She just says, "Not from you." Asked another server to drop their tab off. They paid and still tipped. And my boss literally said, "If they get that worked up, I don't care if they come back." Then today, these people walk in 20 minutes before we close, and I told them the kitchen takes their last order 15 minutes before we close, so just be warned. The woman says, "Well, it says 3 online." Like, yeah, bruh, you still think it's okay to walk in 20 minutes before we lock the doors. This is a breakfast place, okay? We open at 6 a.m., No one wants to be trapped there for 10 hours. As I continue to explain, just to clear confusion, she cuts me off and mocks my voice and says, "Well, 3 online." Again, I wanted to clock her. Lastly, another old woman called because she ordered an Uber Eats order that was missing butter and jam for her toast. She might be at work and not have it, that's fine. But she called me a stupid effing bitch over it like numerous times and kept saying, "Let me effing finish," as I was trying to ask her name because I didn't know what she was talking about. Potatoes were raw. No way. People always say this when the oil is first changed. No fruit in her French toast. She ordered the version without it. And then she says, "My food is cold. I'm cooking it all right now." She ordered the food at 10 a.m. and called almost 5 hours later. It just doesn't make too much sense. I think she was mad about the butter and jam but needed more fuel for her fire. Told her manager wasn't there, he leaves like 2 hours before we close, and she just went off on me and was like, "I won't write a nasty review over this." But calling and yelling at someone who has nothing to do with this particular situation is what truly makes you feel better? Get help, you sad, old, miserable people. All the nice, wonderful regulars are amazing and genuine and make up for these losers who are just rude, angry people. 4. So I got hired to make the cocktail menu for this sushi place in the suburbs of Chicago. And this 60-year-old woman is there as a server while I'm demoing the cocktails for the owner and setting up their bar. She gets it in her head that I don't know what I'm doing, and I just stop and look at her, and I list off all of my experience because I'm flat out tired of this bull. Now, places I've worked include Michelin star restaurants, one of the top 5 private clubs in the country, high-volume fine dining, etc. I've worked for multiple famous chefs. I watch the Food Network to see if I recognize anyone, even if I myself am a nobody. I went out to learn from the best, and here I am to share it with her. And she tells me I don't know anything because I never worked for Chef Rick Bayless, because assumedly he's the only chef she's ever heard of. Hellfreezer's note, I had to look him up. I'd never heard of him. Now, this is a woman telling me that modern businessmen don't drink gin, who she believes we are going to cater to in the far, far, far western suburbs of Chicago, where our neighboring locations are a Starbucks, a kebabs place, a gym, a physical therapy office, a chiropractor, a McDonald's, a car dealership, a mechanic's garage, an Oberweis, a local dairy chain's restaurant. They sell iced cream and milk in the glass bottles you can return for money off your next gallon, a Dance Mom-style after-school dance studio, and literally no business park whatsoever within 5 miles on North Avenue, Route 64. Now, part of this was that I had been called about 2 days before to be notified that the liquor license went into effect way earlier than they anticipated. They expected to be open without one. So I had to scramble with the manager at a restaurant depot the literal night before to pick up booze, and this woman is criticizing every single choice I made about everything, when the reality of it is that I picked the best of what our options were without spending too much. She demands to know why we're using a tequila she's never heard of, and I say because it's good and it's cheap. She demands to know why we aren't using Patron, because Patron is $60, and this isn't a tequila or a dive bar, and we only really need one tequila. And I went with Espolon, because the Reposado didn't cost $60 a bottle. Every single choice I made, she shot down. She starts going off, "I remember when this came out," and starts saying random years like it has anything to do with anything. Finally, demands to know where I got the idea for something, because no businessmen are gonna drink this, only kids would drink that, and no kids are gonna eat sushi, it's only businessmen that eat sushi. So I go into my bag and I pull out the menu for a restaurant next to the Sears Tower, and I show it to her, and I ask her what does she think about it, because that's one of the places where I got the idea for the cocktail from. And you can see the next menu also has a similar cocktail, with the same name, made slightly differently. She tells me that this cocktail on the menu, the Farmer's Daughter, is a bad idea because no one would ever make a gin and vodka martini. A martini has to be one or the other. She tells me that the place I got the menu from would never sell to the businessmen she thinks are flocking to see her at the all-you-can-eat sushi place on the outskirts of the Chicago area. She tells me that the cocktails in the menus I showed her from the places I've worked were made by people that didn't know what they were doing. I ask her why that is. So she looks at it and goes, "I can tell these people don't know what they're doing. It doesn't even say the glass type." I look at her and I point to the page where it says coupe, and I say it goes in the coupe glass. She tells me she's never heard of a coupe glass, and I look at her and say, "And that is why I don't listen to you." She looked at me like, "What?" And so I said, "I've never worked for Rick Bayless, you're right, I haven't. Does he even own a restaurant in Chicago? But I have worked for Grant Hackett's, Fabio Viviani, and Art Smith, the place where they hold the James Beard Awards ceremony, the biggest patio bar in Chicago, and everywhere else I've told you that you didn't recognize was somewhere world famous. I've worked for people who write for Food and Wine magazine and have been on the Food Network. I told her, just about every bar in the country switched to coupe glasses over martini glasses years ago because Death & Company made a lot of really good points about how awful martini glasses are. Speaking of which, the person who made the cocktail you criticized used to work for them, and the menu you think no businessman would order off of is from a restaurant on the ground floor of the building next to the Sears Tower. Their entire business model is lunches and happy hour, and they do more sales in a day than this place will do in a week. So, after she got fired the next day for being blatantly racist and calling the manager Ms. Toyota, her last name is Xiao, and I was able to set up proper liquor distributors and get Roku gin and Haku vodka, I made a variation of the cocktail she criticized and put it on the menu. So I stumbled on this video of Rick Bayless on accident, and I had to share that story. It's something I'm still baffled by to this day. Hellfreezer's note, as I intimated in the story, I'd never heard of Rick Bayless until this particular story cropped up, and I had to look him up to get the correct pronunciation of his name, because I wasn't sure if it was Bayless, but it's Bayless apparently, so there we go. And that is the extent of what I know about him. Had a quick look at some of his videos, not quite my vibe, but I can see why it'd be appealing, I suppose. I don't know much about him beyond that, so if he has like a secret hobo basement or something, it's news to me. All I know is that he exists, so there we go. 5. I'm a 25-year-old woman, and I've been serving for 5 years. I've been working for a new restaurant in New York City. They seem to be super corporate in most aspects. No one is a full-time employee, no front of house gets more than 29 hours a week. No doubles, and mandatory 30-minute breaks for night shift. I make about $1,000 a week, regardless, so no complaints there. The lack of hours plus the money is actually a breath of fresh air in this industry. Since this is a new place, management is new and mostly from the West Coast. Please keep this in mind while you listen. It was a busy Friday night and my six top had all ordered cocktails. I go to the bar to get my drinks because I like to get my drinks on the table before their food hits the table, as they will probably finish it before the food comes and hence need another round. Anyways, the bar is flooded with tickets and I'm patiently waiting for my drinks at the end of the bar. I put my tray on the mat where the drinks go and I realize this might have bothered the bartender. But anyways, he tells me, he's male in his 30s, to move out of his way, and I respond that he can just say excuse me. He then goes he's not going to tell me again to move out of his way. This might not seem like a big deal, but it was his tone. I've also never met this person before. I go to a manager and he gets called to the office. Now, I want to mention that I have expressed to my manager that I would like to move higher up to a server trainer position a few weeks prior to all of this happening. Fast forward a few days later, my manager tells me I will not be moving forward to this position because the bartender said I'm unfriendly, rude, and that when I told him he can just say excuse me, that I should have said it with a smile. I mean, what a joke. He then proceeded to tell me the bartender was just being himself, and as a server trainer I'm expected to be kind. I think this is a load of cow crap, as I'm so nice and always helping out my coworkers and making conversation. I'm a team player and we're not a pool tip kind of place. I feel like my manager gaslit me and was taking sides. Then a week later, my manager puts us in the same section and I had to work directly with them. And he had the audacity to tell me that because of me he got in a lot of trouble and that I shouldn't have told the manager. Am I just being sensitive? What would you guys have done? P.S. This guy has started with other people, asking if they want to take it outside after work if they have a problem. I want to add that I did apologize to him if he felt like I was being rude first, but I was taken aback by how he spoke to me. I told him that I hope we can keep things professional and that my intentions were not for him to get in trouble, but to not do it again to anyone, but especially any new staff, especially if they are female. He shut me down so quick and said he did not accept my apology and that he was not interested in keeping it professional, but that we could talk about it after work. I later caught him telling another one of my female co-workers how he tried to apologize to him, and he was laughing about it. He is lucky that I've changed because the old me would have gotten police escorted out of that place. But I chose to take the high road since I'm certain I'll have the last laugh. Edit. Since I clearly did not go into enough detail about the tray on the mat part, it's like I put my drinks there and left my tray on the mat. Also, the tickets were not on the mat, they were on his side of the bar. It was the beginning of service, so it was not middle of service busy. I laid my tray to transfer my drinks, and lifted my tray back up onto my hand while he garnished my final drink. Maybe I should have gone into more detail on that part, but I was not watching or waiting the entire time like some folks on Reddit had thought. And my table was on the complete opposite side of the restaurant, and I didn't want to bring 5 drinks out so one person could feel left out. When I arrived for my drinks, he was adding the rock and the orange peel to an old-fashioned. I was not watching over him while he made 6 drinks. Hellfreezer's note: if this guy has been challenging people to fight, next time he does it, if it's in an area that's somewhat near customers, an anonymous complaint to corporate, and maybe a review as well, also anonymous, saying that this bartender, I don't know if he wears name tags, but if he does, you could probably name him, has been antagonizing members of staff and, as such, creating a hostile environment and making customers feel unsafe, and certainly reluctant to return there. Guys like him are trash, and they eventually take themselves out, but there's no reason you can't hasten things along the way, but very important to remember, do it in a way that you do not get caught. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Spinning Plates, episode 251. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. Before you go, please hit the like button and share the video with friends and family. And if you want early access to the videos, support me on my Patreon page, linked for you in the description. And all help is appreciated and helps me do this for as long as I can. And before we go, we have a shout out to give to the author of story number 2, that is, The New Poet Lawyerette. Thank you very much for allowing us to use your story, The New Poet Lawyerette. And with that, let's move right along to Hellfreezer's question and answer of the day. And today's question comes via Newcomb via the Discord. Thank you very much, Newcomb. And that is, what era do you think had the most interesting art and music? Now, I'm a big fan of the 80s aesthetic. A lot of my favorite films come from there. A lot of the favorite music I like as well. However, a lot of it also comes from the 90s. Because, I was born in the very early 80s. I had my teen years in the 90s, and I became an adult by the end of that decade. But I think I can only pick one, so I'm going to pick the 1980s because, well, we had Ghostbusters, Beverly Hills Cop, Red Dwarf, one of my favorite TV shows, come out there. Star Trek was revived via The Next Generation, which led to so many Star Trek shows after it. It was a good time to be a nerd, actually, the 1980s. Pretty good time to be a nerd now, actually, as we have more content than ever. So much so that it's actually kind of hard to find the stuff you really want, oftentimes. I've come across shows and various other things years after they've finished their run, and it's like, oh, this is actually really good. I wish I'd known about it when it was on. Okay, so why don't you let me know what you think in a comment below. I look forward to reading your answers. And before we go, we'll have the answer of the day from a previous video. And today's answer comes from Spinning Plates 205, and was a very important question. And it was about, has Donald Duck been flashing us the whole time? Because he wears a towel when he comes out of the shower, but he doesn't wear trousers or pants the rest of the time. And today's answer comes from Deeper Things. Donald Duck is not a flasher. He's got nothing to flash. The towel is to dry his feathers. That's my story, and I'm sticking with it. Porky Pig, on the other hand, actually spent time in jail for not wearing pants, and is now on some rather uncomfortable lists. I won't even start on the Naturalist Club in Zootopia, where Officer Hops was shocked at the sight of so many smooth crotches. Oh my. Thank you very much for your answer, Deeper Things. And with that, I'm going to head off for now, so until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourself.